I'm supposed to be his example. But I spoke with him a few days ago and he said to me about this egg thing. He said, Dad, he's a cheat. Okay, and we're promoting the fight. And these people have me under a great deal of pressure. I'm Great Britain. That's who we are. I don't care what they're doing. We have to bring them into a straight line. Because where this country is going with this behavior, the Warriors.
The forthcoming bout between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor, scheduled for April 26, 2025, at London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, has reignited a storied family rivalry that captivated the boxing world in the 1990s as anticipation builds. Chris Eubanks, a central figure in this saga, has voiced profound concerns about the matchup, citing issues ranging from weight disparities to fighter safety. If you liked this video, please subscribe, punch Vista, and click the bell icon for more latest and interesting videos.
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that.
We know that your dad has had two very, very famous fights in the 90s with Chris Sr. You're, 3 or 4 weight divisions away from Chris Eubank Jr. at the moment, but you are 19 and you will continue to grow and you will continue to put weight on. What chance of you fighting Chris Eubank Jr. at some point in the future?
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that. I'd love that. But there's so many obstacles I've got to get first before we can even consider that. Yeah. So far it's just a fantasy for the British public. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds?
In the early 1990s, British boxing was electrified by the fierce competition between Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Their contrasting styles and personalities led to 2 epic encounters, the first in 1990, where Eubank Sr. secured a round, and a rematch in 1993 that ended in a draw. These bouts not only defined an era, but also set the stage for a generational sequel involving their sons. The idea of a fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn has been percolating for years, fueled by their fathers' legendary clashes. The initial attempt to stage this bout in October 2022 was derailed when Benn failed. Testing positive for a forbidden substance that can elevate testosterone levels in men, Benn attributed the adverse finding to her overconsumption of eggs, a claim that sparked both controversy and skepticism. Despite this setback, Benn was eventually cleared by the UK anti-doping agency, paving the way for the rescheduled fight.
It's a mismatch. It's an entertaining matchup.
Why is it a mismatch?
Because of ability, because of weight classes. Chris Jr. is a middleweight and a super middleweight. He's naturally a super middleweight. So, he's having to starve himself to come down and, with all the catch weights and all of this stuff, it's a mismatch. He is operated at world level. He's been in with the likes of George Groves and, the list goes on. It's a mismatch in ability and weight class.
How is your relationship with your dad now?
We're in a weird, we're in a strange place in our lives at the moment. It's very hard to kind of, go through an entire career being with your old man and then to not have him around anymore in terms of, the boxing side of things. But I just felt that that's what I needed. I felt like I wanted to, and I would say this to him as well, I was like, listen, I'm going to write a book one day. The book can't be everything that my dad said I should do, I did. Mm-hmm. I've got to find out on my own. I've got to make my own choices. I've got to write my own future.
Chris Eubank Sr. has been a vocal critic of the fight, expressing deep reservations about its organization and the potential risks involved. His primary concerns center on the weight at which the bout is set and the associated health implications for his son. The fight is contracted at a catch weight of 157 lbs, requiring Eubank Jr. to drop 3 lb below his usual middleweight limit. Eubanks has highlighted the dangers of such weight cuts, emphasizing the strain it places on a fighter's body and the increased risk of injury. He has been particularly critical. of the promoters, accusing them of prioritizing financial gain over fighter safety. In a candid interview, Eubank Sr. stated, "You tried to murder my boys. I'm coming for you." Eubank's apprehensions are not unfounded. The process of cutting weight can lead to severe dehydration and diminished physical performance factors that can compromise a boxer's health both in and out of thawing.
8 pounds? You better watch out, dreadlocks. You better watch out, because we are come for you. Oh, sorry. It's my mother's tongue again. It comes through. You'd better watch out, because we're not playing. We're real, and we are a terror. And the procedure will be parliamentary. Rastafari.
Eubank Sr. has been adamant that the fight breaks the rules and has suggested that it should not proceed under the current conditions. Eubank Sr. has been vocal about his opposition to the proposed boxing match between his son Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, the son of his former rival Nigel Benn. His primary concern centers around the catchweight agreement of 107 kilos, which he believes poses significant health risk to his son Eubank Sr., has expressed that reducing to this weight could endanger Chris Jr.'s life, emphasizing the dangers of severe weight cuts in boxing. In a direct appeal, Eubank Sr. pleaded with both Conor and Nigel Benn to reconsider the fight. He highlighted the potential dangers, stating that Hisson, at 33 years old, would be risking his life by dropping below 160 lbs despite his concerns, and even offering to cover a financial penalty to cancel the bout. Nigel Benn insisted that the fight proceed as planned. Eubank Sr. has also criticized the promoters involved, accusing them of prioritizing financial gain over fighter safety. He has been outspoken about the irresponsibility of arranging such a bout under potentially hazardous conditions.
For the Metro newspaper, and in that interview, Conor walked in, and I said to Conor, and I was saying to Nigel, please, don't do this. You know what it is to, my son is 33. For him to drop 3 pounds beneath 160 puts his life in danger. And Nigel said, sorry, if he doesn't take the fight, if he's above that, then he's going to have to pay a forfeit of £300,000. And I said, well, I'm very happy to pay that. So please, stand down. I was speaking to both of them. Nigel said no, he's not standing down. He said he signed a contract, he's a grown man. So I said, Nigel, please, my king, please, don't.
Beyond his objections to the fight's logistics, Eubank Sr. has proposed alternative paths for both fighters. He believes that Conor Benn should focus on competing within his natural weight class of 147 lbs, targeting champions in the welterweight division rather than moving up to face Eubank Jr. Eubank Sr. has also mentioned the possibility of Benn facing his nephew Harlem Eubank, who competes at welterweight and has recently called out Benn. The dynamics within the Eubank family have also been brought into the spotlight.
My concern for Eubank is the amount of weight this boy's got to cut to come down to, I think the fight's made at 160 pounds, is that right? Right. So he's got to come down from 100, from whatever his walking round weight is. Let's say he walks around at 180 pounds when he's out of training. That's like 20 pound weight difference, right? That he's got to lose. It's not safe. It's not. He can't possibly be at his physically strongest. He can't. And he's really putting himself on the line, right? Because when your weight weakened, I know I've been weight drained in fights previously. So I'm speaking from a point of reference. When you're weight drained, it doesn't matter what you eat on the day, it doesn't make you...
Eubank Jr. has expressed a desire to have his father in his corner for the fight, emphasizing the personal significance of continuing the family rivalry. However, Eubank Sr.'s public opposition and concerns about the fight's safety have led to tensions, with reports indicating a degree of estrangement between father and son. The lead-up to the fight has been marked by a series of public incidents that have added to the controversy. During a press conference, Eubank Jr. smashed an egg on Benn's face, a move referencing Benn's earlier test controversy and resulting in a $100,000 fine for Eubank Jr. This act escalated tensions and led to a physical altercation between the fighters, further fueling media scrutiny and public debate.
Boxing Media Hub here with some breaking news. So Chris Eubank Jr. has been fined £100,000 by the British Boxing Board of Control for slapping Conor Benn with an egg. So who's the one with egg on their face now?
Where's that money going? Because £100,000 is the kind of money that can make a huge difference to a huge amount of boxing clubs up and down the country that are the grassroots of the sport, that are getting kids off the street that need to be off the street and then onto the straight and narrow. You know, boxing clubs are, for many people, more than just a sports club. They are social workers, they're therapy, they're all these things, and yet that £100,000 is never going to be put into their pocket.
Former British boxer Paul Smith found the incident amusing, stating that he laughed his head off. When Eubank Jr. slapped Benn with the egg, he described the act as poetic, highlighting the irony given Benn's earlier claims about egg consumption leading to his failed tests.
That slap, I personally do not call it a slap. I call that a marketing stunt, and that have helped to publicize or market or sell the fight way more, because Chris had to do that, and he basically made the fight very, very personal. And now we don't have to say it's because of their father's legacy, but hey, Conor will say, you slapped me and you tried to embarrass me, and then now I have to fight and show you that I am a better fighter and boxer than you. But I feel like also that is the best 100k Chris Eubank Jr. have ever spent. Listen, I would like to know your ringside opinions in the comments. Let me know what you think about that.
However, opinions on the incident varied within the boxing community. Liam Smith, another professional boxer, commented that while he found the egg slap humorous, he also considered it inappropriate for a professional setting. Nigel Benn expressed his disapproval of the incident.
A fight that I'll be watching. I'll be there obviously on the night, but if I wasn't there,
what have you made of the antics?
I would be watching it.
What have you made of the antics? Do you think? I mean,
I've seen worse. I said about Chisora in throwing the table towards Dylan White. I was filming it. I was sitting in the front row of the press conference. I was at the press conference, and I was laughing and joking about it. And afterwards, it was okay. It was a bit of a rant by Chisora, but we expect that from Chisora. I'm not going to lie, when it happened, I laughed my head off. I absolutely laughed my head off.
I did too.
I thought it was quite poetic. I thought what happened was quite funny. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't something that, like, I had someone, Nigel, saying I thought he glassed him. I can understand by the noise of it. Things happen fast in the heat of a moment. I get it. But afterwards, all's well that ends well, really. And it's created a lot more fuss about the fight, a lot more column inches, a lot more press and publicity. All publicity is good publicity. But then the board come in and think they can find a fight at £100,000 for it, and that's their prerogative, but it didn't sit right with me.
Emphasizing that such behavior is detrimental to the sport of boxing, he highlighted the importance of maintaining professionalism and respect. Especially during promotional events, Nigel acknowledged the personal stakes involved given his own history with Chris Eubank Sr., but stressed that the focus should remain on the athlete's skills and dedication rather than on sensationalized confrontations. Reflecting on the moment when Conor was directly confronted by Eubank Jr., Nigel admitted feeling a surge of protective instinct. However, he recognized the necessity for his son to handle such challenges independently, demonstrating resilience and composure in the face of provocation. Nigel believes that these experiences, while challenging, are integral to Conor's growth both as a fighter and as an individual. In response to the fine, Eubank Jr. expressed confusion and frustration, stating, "It's definitely an unusually high number. There have been guys who have done way worse than what I did and been fined a lot less."
You didn't just get slapped with egg in your ass.
I'm just glad that Conor didn't get hold of him. That's why I'm glad that Conor didn't get hold of him, because Conor was going some. But then I had the opportunity to go, then the big bounce come and chop the head off of me.
He defended his actions as a symbolic statement against cheating, emphasizing, "What I did wasn't just a slap with an egg, it was a statement, a symbol. It was letting the entire community and world know that if you cheat, you're going to get exposed." In a candid interview in June 2023, former world champion boxer Chris Eubank Sr. expressed profound disappointment regarding his son Chris Eubank Jr.'s career decisions and training regimen, which were central to his concerns. Eubank Jr. has perceived disregard for paternal guidance and professional advice.
I'm sitting up here today on a stage with two of the scummiest characters in boxing, in my opinion. A drug cheat and a man who did everything in his power to help him get away with it. So me throwing an egg at somebody who absurdly claims that that is the reason why he failed 2 drugs tests because of contaminated eggs, I think that's light. And I think that's deserved. He deserved the embarrassment of what happened. You know, if I had an opportunity to do it again, I would.
Eubanks highlighted a conversation with former heavyweight champion David Haye, who informed him that Eubank Jr. had ceased sparring in preparation for fights and was surrounded by individuals who did not challenge his decisions. Eubank Sr. remarked, "David Haye called me the other day and said, Junior doesn't spar. He does everything that he wants to do. He's got yes men around him." This perceived insularity and refusal to heed advice culminated in Eubank Jr. Eubank Sr. attributed this loss to arrogance, stating, "It is arrogance when you shut your ears, and what arrogance gets you is what it got him in his last fight, the S." Strained relationship between father and son became evident when Eubank Jr. replaced his father with Roy Jones Jr. As his trainer, Eubank Jr. lamented this separation, emphasizing that his son's potential was hindered by an unwillingness to listen. "My son could have been a tremendous fighter, but he hasn't because he doesn't listen further." More Eubank Sr. acknowledged the characterization of his son as Akarlaten, suggesting that without his guidance, Eubank Jr. would not have achieved the financial success he enjoyed. He claimed responsibility for securing lucrative fights for Hisson, noting, "Without me, you can't make the money that he's made." Chris Eubank Jr. has recently opened up about the deterioration of his relationship with his father.
You lost to a fighter called Billy Saunders. You shouldn't have lost that fight. You lost it because you were disobedient to the plan that I gave you. You started fighting after the 6th round to prove to me that you could beat him at any time. I expressly put down in solid words, you are not fighting Billy Saunders, you are fighting the promoter. And you will not beat the promoter. As they say, you'd have to knock him out to get a draw. That's the humor they use as the influence of the promoters. And you gave him the first 6 rounds. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the fight belongs to Harlem the Gold Eubank. And you should be fighting Billy Joe Saunders and record a win over him, which you should have in the first instance. What more can I say?
Former world champion Chris Eubank Sr. The rift between the father and son has been attributed to several factors, including professional disagreements, personal tragedies, and a desire for independence. A significant point of contention arose from Eubank Sr.'s opposition to his son's scheduled fight against Conor Benn on April 26, 2025. This match is particularly symbolic as it mirrors the historic rivalry between their fathers Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn, who fought in 1990 and 1993. Eubank Jr. expressed frustration over his father's lack of support, stating, "We don't talk. He has shown no interest in my career for a long period of time. Now he's shown no interest in me in a long period of time." Eubank Jr. noted the irony of his father's distance, remarking, "As somebody who's lost Asen, I think that's a pretty insane thing to be doing. An insane way to be acting to kind of not be speaking to your remaining kids." Eubank Jr. also emphasized his need to establish his own identity separate from his father's influence. He stated, "I felt it wasn't working."
He was not happy with that decision. That's the start of it. Then you have the situation with my brother passing away. That affected him in a deep way, affected all of us.
I talked to him around that time, and I could tell he was profoundly impacted by that.
That's right. Mental health is a real thing. That incident, coupled with the fact that we were already not seeing eye to eye, destroyed a large part of the relationship. And it still hasn't seemed to have recovered, unfortunately.
Have you made any attempt to get back together with him?
Of course.
Has he rebuffed that?
And as my own man, I had learned enough and done enough in the game to do my own thing. Teddy Atlas, in an interview with Pro Boxing Fans, provides an in-depth breakdown of the fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, describes the fight as a banger, emphasizing its promotional appeal due to the personal animosity between the fighters and the historic rivalry of their fathers, legendary British boxers Chris Eubank Sr. And Nigel Benn notes that this history adds extra excitement for fans and will likely result in a sold venue analyzing the fight. Atlas suggests that Eubank Jr. will likely try to keep the fight at a distance, utilizing his hand speed, counterpunching, ability and skill in throwing punches from different angles space, he explains, is advantageous to Eubank Jr., allowing him to execute his strategy effectively. On the other hand, Atlas predicts that Conor Benn will attempt to close the distance, applying relentless pressure attacking the body to slow Eubank Jr. down and reducing his mobility. Benn's aggressive but calculated fighting style, combined with a responsible defensive approach, makes for an intriguing matchup, discussing Chris Eubanks' decision to boycott the fight due to concerns over the catchweight. And rehydration clause imposed on his son Atlas fully supports the former champion's stance. He acknowledges the dangers of weight cuts in boxing, especially when a fighter has to drop significantly before a fight. Eubank Sr.'s concerns stem from both his experience as a fighter and his role as a father wanting to ensure his son's safety in the ring. Atlas agrees that only a fighter truly knows their own body and its limits, but he understands the father's protective instinct and expert insight into the sport's risks. In terms of training, Eubank Jr. has made notable adjustments previously coached by boxing legend Roy Jones Jr. Eubank Jr. has transitioned to having his father as his trainer for this bout. Jones has expressed concerns about Eubank Jr.'s approach, particularly regarding his perceived underestimation of Benn's punching power. Jones highlighted that Benn, despite moving up in weight, possesses significant knockout potential, referencing his stoppage of Chris Algieri as evidence. Jones advised Eubank Jr. to remain cautious and not to underestimate Benn's capabilities. The financial stakes of this fight are considerable. Negotiations have seen Eubank Jr. agree to a 55-45 purse split in his favor, a compromise reflecting his higher profile and experience. However, Benn has yet to fully agree to these terms, potentially seeking a more equitable split. The outcome of this fight could significantly impact both fighters' careers, with discussions of potential matchups against high-profile opponents like Canelo Alvarez. For the victor, the bout between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn encapsulates a complex tapestry of family legacy, personal ambition, and professional rivalry. Chris Eubank Sr.'s vocal opposition underscores the multifaceted concerns surrounding the fight, from weight and safety issues to the broader implications for both fighters' careers. Do you agree with Chris Eubank's concerns, or do you think the fight should go ahead as planned? Drop your opinions in the comments below.